Let's have a look at the new civilizations. So we have the Burgundians, which I think is a pretty cool addition because I don't really think of them as being like a very big focal point of most medieval games. Like they often are there. They're not really a feature. So let's have a look at the civilization bonus. It's considered a cavalry civilization, which I'm never going to complain about. I love cavalry. Economic upgrades are available 1 age earlier than other civs. So this is a very interesting change. So if they mean like double bit axe and horse colors available in Dark Age, what I imagine will happen is you will do a build order and then you'll get those 2 upgrades on the way up, which is going to actually be a pretty huge buff. And I think the same thing will happen with heavy plow on the way up. I don't think the same thing will happen with bowsaw. I think bowsaw will still be gone first thing in feudal age. And I feel like that could be a little bit of a potential balance issue already with the civ. Getting like having the already getting double bit earlier and then getting bowsaw also earlier. I feel like this might be a bit of a compound effect. I'm not sure yet. We'll obviously see. That is definitely something I'd like to keep an eye on here. Then we have the Fallen Knights return 50% of their gold cost. As a number, 50% seems like too much. I wouldn't be surprised if this went down to like a 20%, 25%. It needs to be a lower number than this, surely. Like, I can't imagine 50% of their gold cost just being gone. And because you do often lose knights. Hello, Hammer Time. How are you doing? So we have the Caustilia, a cavalry that I can charge their attack set. This is an interesting concept. I actually think they might even consider moving this over to the Step Lancer as well, if it works. However, I do have to wonder how it's actually going to work. Is that an original take on the Berbers bonus? See, I think if it was like a researchable tech, like similar to Mazdra, it could have some kind of like at 33% even, like that would probably still be an okay addition to the game. I think as an inherent bonus, this is an issue. 100% I think that's an issue. And then the Flemish militia, a heavy infantry unit with a bonus versus cavalry, can only be obtained via the Flemish Revolution technology. This completely depends on like the numbers for this unit. We have no numbers, no ideas for this civ. And that's a little bit of a concern for me as well, because if you look at we're going to skip Burgundian vineyards, we'll talk about it in a second, but Flemish Revolution upgrades all villages to Flemish militia. Now, if these militia have relatively decent stats, it's going to be like Ragnarok on steroids, I think. Like, especially if they're a more well-rounded version of a pikeman, for example. Yeah, one of a kind, absolutely. So I feel like that could be a huge issue, especially if we're talking like post-imp. You would have deleted 50 villages, 50 to 60 villages anyway. And like, well, let's just make these my halberdiers in front of siege. So I think it will also depend on how broad the tech tree is. But I could see this being a potential issue. I don't think there's any other, maybe except for supremacy, which only makes the villages more useful in combat. And you have to continually select them. It's like kind of similar to that. That's the only thing I can think of that is similar to this. So we'll have to see what happens with it. It's obviously quite an all-in strategy, but I feel like this could be a game-breaking mechanic. Similarly to Burgundian vineyards. Now, not so much as an early kind of technology, but if we're talking like post-imp, and you suddenly have, let's say, 3-4k food in the bank, well, depending on the cost of this technology, you can get 2,000 gold in the bank really quickly. Now, 2,000 gold can be the difference between winning and losing a game, in my opinion, like quite a substantial amount of money. I do have to wonder how much Burgundian Vineyards is going to cost initially, and if there's going to be a cap to it. I think if there was a cap to it, I think that would be the most ideal situation for Civ balance. But it also depends on the rest of their tech tree as well. Like, if they suddenly have, like, terrible infantry beyond the Flemish militia, then sure, maybe some of these other things won't break the game as much. But I definitely think the Fallen Knights is 50% of the gold cost is way too much. I think the economic upgrades approach could be a potential issue. And I think the unique technologies are gonna need very stringent boundaries of which they work. Now we're going to talk about the Sicilians. Now, pretty cool civ from what I was seeing. It's an infantry civilization that has castles and town centers that are constructed 100% faster. That doesn't phase me too much. I think that's actually a pretty cool concept, having a civ that is more defensively orientated with and has good infantry. Although castle drops with this civ obviously will be a bit harder to stop. And land military units absorbing 33% of all incoming bonus damage. So this is obviously not referring to the knight's base damage against villagers or not. This isn't referring to a halberdier doing damage to cavalry. So this means that when you're using knights against pikes, your knights are absorbing 33% more damage against the pike than they would against normal civs. Which means that a knight camel war, the Sicilians will win that war. So that actually could be a potential issue as well. I don't think it's quite as game breaking as getting 50% gold back, but I do think the numbers might be toned back a little bit. Every single unit is a cataphract. Similarly, like, I wouldn't say like every unit's a cataphract, but I can see a potential balanced nightmare for this bonus. And each farm upgrade grants farmers +1 carry capacity. I think this is more in line with our general civ bonuses, and I really do like this one. I don't think it breaks the game by any stretch of the imagination. And it just means that I think it also kind of ties into Sicilian farmers back then as well. So I think that bonus is good. The castles and town centers might be a potential balance change that might happen. And the land military units absorbing 33% of all incoming bonus damage. I think they're gonna have to play with the numbers a little bit, or they might have to change the way in which certain units are upgraded specifically to Sicilians. So it could be a potential issue. They have a unique building called the Donjon, which I'm imagining is, from what it sounds like, it just sounds like a slightly easier to build tower. I don't think this is an issue. I think it could be a very cool concept, but I do think we are going into the civs being a little bit overloaded, especially for AoE2. Though Chimera, the only other civ I think that could be considered even similarly as overloaded as these two civs. And I still wouldn't consider Chimera to be this overloaded. Yeah, I would agree, Hammer Time. The game mechanics, it do feel a little bit out of place. I do like that they're adding new civs. I do like that they've got a lot of these ideas. I do think that some of these ideas are out of place for AoE2. But the Surgeon unique unit, they haven't really given us much information, like if it's good against certain units, if it's if it's just gonna be like a champion, or if it's gonna be like a weak version of a champion that can construct these defensive buildings. Really depends on the stats here and how much they cost, because like an infantry unit that's able to construct a tower whilst it's forward could actually be pretty damn strong. Then it will all depend on the numbers, it'll depend on how much donjons themselves cost. And then having them as a tower that can also make its own reinforcements, because these donjons can train additional surgeons. So, I don't know, I feel a little bit weird about this unique building. But it could also be similar to a Crepos, which I haven't talked about yet. If it's more similar to a Crepos, I think this is less of an issue because of the stone investment. Yeah. The Cuban TC thing is still stupid all these months later. It's pretty hard to deal with the Cuban boom, absolutely. Now, the First Crusade technology, each town center spawns a one-time group of 7 sergeants. I think this could be another one of those potential balanced nightmares. This is more something that you'd see in AoE 3 because other civs have the ability to deal with an extra 49 units. But let's just say that you have your 7 TCs up for whatever reason. If these units are in addition to your pop cap, that could be a huge problem. Like, let's just say suddenly you have 249 pop, and you've got an extra 49 units. That can change fights pretty comfortably. So I'm not certain on this one, especially the numbers. They're kind of going with 7 sergeants, but it will kind of depend on how strong is this unit. So I can't obviously judge entirely just yet. And then Scootage. Each team member receives a one-time payment of 50 in gold for each military unit that they own. This will completely depend on how much Scootage actually costs. If it's something like 2,000 food, 1,000 wood, 500 gold, that could not be terrible. Like it needs to be something quite expensive because if you have 100 military units, which you'll often have anyway in mid kind of imp, I'd say, like, or even let's go 80. It's 100 units is 1500 gold straight up. Like that's pretty amazing, the technology. And if you've got all, if you're using this in a team game, that is basically straight up broken, in my opinion. I like the idea behind it, but I do like that they have put underneath it. Note that civilization balance and bonuses may change between now and release. I do really hope that some of these numbers are toned down. Hey, how are you going today? But we're gonna go into the bit that I'm very keen for, which is the 3 new fully voiced campaigns. So we have Edward Longshanks, obviously representing the Britons. We have the Grand Dukes of the West, which is a Burgundian expansion. A Burgundian campaign, sorry. And Hortusville's, I don't actually know this person. But this is about the Sicilians with it's about the Normans moving to Sicily, essentially. It's pretty cool. Do I like the expansion? I like the idea behind the expansion. I like the civs. I don't like the balance. I think the balance is really like it feels like what they did with League of Legends to me at the moment, where the champions got more overloaded, if that makes sense. Like a lot of his mechanics are in AoE3 and they work in AoE3 because other civs have the ability to deal with this relatively easy. Whereas in AoE2, an extra 1500 gold or an extra like 2000 gold in like kind of late stage of the game, like it's no longer a matter of can you deal with this, it's a matter of you're dead. And getting 50% back on your knights for any civ sounds ridiculous to me, honestly. It is gonna. I do think it would be hard to balance, though. But I am really keen for the 3 new campaigns. I think those are gonna be amazing. I do have to question some of the numbers at the moment. You like the streaming title? Thank you, Algo. I really like it as well, actually. A lot of players are single player players. So I took a look at the. See, that's where I'm coming from, Ard. I do really like the idea behind a lot of this. I think the campaigns are gonna be fun. I think the civs, as like an idea behind them, will be fun. I do just have to question the numbers. Like, they just sound insane to me. And like, you'd have to have so many other things changed about the civs to make them balanced. I speak like the multiplayer players are just very low, which is indeed true. I would love to hear what someone like the Viper or Doubt or MBL here has to say about this as well. It would be very interesting. King Dopey, do I need to buy the new DLC after it comes out? We can play the game normally. I do assume that you'll be able to play without it. I don't think this would be one of those things where they would kind of force it upon you. Viper has a video on YouTube already. Okay, I'll have to check that out. Thank you so much, guys, for that. I think there was one thing I saw in the achievements. Shut up for here. Defeat the French army before capturing Joan of Arc in the 6th Grand Dukes of the West mission. So to me, this kind of positions the Burgundian campaign as at least somewhat touching on this period. I think it's going to be very cool. Like, I love the idea of showing the other side of the story. I do love that. What new civs? Yeah, that would be a PR nightmare hammer time, absolutely. I do have to wonder how they're also going to go about making it so players that haven't bought the DLC, like, what are they going to do with the civs? Like, do you just not have access to these 2 civs? That seems like, I don't know, it seems almost unfair to not have the extra civs available in ranked, but I honestly wouldn't know. They don't tell their honest opinion since they don't want to burn bridges with Microsoft. Oh, okay, yeah. And hello, False Teeth, how you doing? But yeah, I'm really keen for a lot of this. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it between now and release. I do hope that there are lots of numbers that are adjusted here, or that the costs of the text kind of reflect how much of a bonus these really are. So I don't think adding things that are new to the game is wrong. Like, for example, with Khmer. Like, Khmer to me are a very unique civ, like the house hopping, the farms. I think humans, yeah, as well. Like, they have some quirks that make them kind of awkward to play against. I do agree with that. But I wouldn't mind if these civs do have some of these quirks maybe a little bit toned down, especially like this one off the bat just seems like one of the worst ideas I've heard. As a civ bonus, like you'll literally be throwing your knights against your opponent's economy and you won't even care that you've just lost 38 gold. 38 gold, like knights essentially. Like like yes, you have to lose them first to get the 38 gold back, but you will eventually lose them. The Cavalier or Paladins, I would assume it's the Knight line in general. Fallen Knights, it doesn't say, but I would assume it would be Cavalier and Paladin. If it's not Cavalier and Paladin, I still think it's going to be an issue. Yeah, basically hard. Like as I said, I think that some of this is interesting. I think the economic upgrades. I think the only one that really will be quite broken would be the wood upgrade. I think the farm upgrade being the age before, that's kind of cool. It's not really that big of a buff. Franks basically might as well get the horse collar anyway. But I do think getting early bowsaw could be a potential issue. Yeah, I do agree, King Joffrey. If they have if they're releasing these numbers as a way of enticing people, that's definitely not worked because it's that out of every. I think people are kind of keen to see new civs. I don't think people are keen to see some of these numbers. This is contradictory to AoE. But then when we think about it, this is just a kind of a new kind of way of adding something to the game, I think. Like a new kind of quirk. I don't think that necessarily is a terrible idea to try out. Compared to some of the other things, this doesn't sound too outlandish to me. I do see what you're saying though, Ard. They do get Paladin, yeah. Although Bulgarians used to get Paladin and they don't anymore, so they might end up stripping them of something else to make off. Yeah, 50% off Paladin. Not obviously 50% off of the researcher Paladin, but 50% coming back from each of your Paladin dying. That's a post-imp nightmare. But yeah, that's all I like really gotta say on these changes. As I said, I'm keen to see how it plays out. I'm not gonna write it off. I will be buying this expansion, but I do worry a little bit about how it's gonna go here. I love Asian mythology art.